So it sounds as though, if somebody's managed, say, if there's an obsolescence manager internally, it sounds a very difficult job. I know you guys help businesses to implement these plans and develop these plans, but from an internal point of view, if there's an obsolescence manager involved, they've got to have so many hats and they've got to involve so many other parts of the business. Supply chain, you've got to involve purchasing and procurement. You've obviously got to involve quality, the operations teams, and pretty much everybody's got to buy into it, haven't they? So, I mean, do Alan Webb, if there isn't an obsolescence manager within the business, let's say in industry, for example, is that something that Alan Webb support with, actually making sure that people are adhering to it throughout?
Well, we certainly have contracted obsolescence managers into business, and recently we have done to support that while they're trying to recruit obsolescence management roles within their own organisation. To quote one senior engineering manager, obsolescence managers are rarer than hen's teeth. And that was a quote one of the obsolescence engineering manager gave us when we were trying to recruit an obsolescence manager about a year ago. So they are quite rare in terms of availability on the market for employment. And it's also so important that the company supports the principle of obsolescence management and actually backs that up with supporting the obsolescence manager in his role. We've seen evidence in the past where obsolescence has been a requirement. We've seen companies that actually say they do obsolescence, but not supported the obsolescence process and the manager. So it is important that if you would take on a role of obsolescence management, you have the support of your company behind it.
And the people who are so-called obsolescence managers tend to be dual-hatted. So they could be a procurement specialist, or they could be an engineer, or which isn't that's their primary role, and obsolescence becomes a secondary role, and almost sometimes gets forgotten about. But actually, it's a full-time role that, as you say, engages across all functions, because obsolescence means different things to different functions. So from a commercial perspective, it may be you haven't placed a contract with a supplier for such a long time, and that supplier has either changed its product or gone out of business. So it's the role itself is a facilitator of information across the organisation to maintain the product availability and services availability. And many organisations actually outsource that service, and then they just have a central point back in the prime itself that we would. So Alan Webb have a number of projects. David's a project manager for 2 or 3, and he will then be client facing in terms of reporting obsolescence on the projects that he's responsible for to the client, and then the client makes those decisions on what they want to do.
So let's stay on the role of the obsolescence manager, because it is a fairly rare title, isn't it, that you see, certainly through industry. It seems like a luxury item to some, I would say. But what's the ideal candidate for somebody like that? What background would they come from if a business was to hire one?
From my perspective, I would look at some sort of technical experience, understanding engineering, maybe support, but certainly I find that, and it's not always the case, but I find that the most effective ones have an engineering type background. I say not always the case, but I think it certainly helps, because when you start to look at what your issues and your problems are and your risks, you need to understand a little bit about the items you're trying to look at, trying to assess, the equipment it goes into. So from my perspective, ideally some sort of engineering background, but I have also seen very successful obsolescence managers come from supply chain, ILS, and indeed just project management as well.
I suppose you've got to be analytical, haven't you, as well, and a good communicator, talking upstream, downstream, and within the organisation as well. I think you've got, like you say, many, many different soft skills there as well.
Yeah. Well, the communication plan is part of the obsolescence management plan, and that is so critical. You have a good communications plan that forms and drops into the obsolescence management plan, and this is where you need to be able to talk to various levels of an organisation, from fairly senior management through to people actually doing day-to-day functions.
So I think the obsolescence manager's role is very much a jack of all trades, as in having a little bit of knowledge of everything, and you're relying on the knowledge of the functions, whether that be engineering, procurement, or otherwise, to tell you what the issues are and what the plan is to resolve that. And then you taking that information and piecing it all together to understand what the big picture looks like, and then you convene that or convey that back to the senior leadership team, so they can then endorse the decision going forward to resolve that particular obsolescence arising. I was just going to say there are a number of project management skills and soft skills that obsolescence managers utilise. You know, the roles aren't dissimilar at all.